Welcome back to another episode of Sideways, a podcast about motorcycle riding in Taiwan. I'm Michael Branica, a YouTuber and off-road riding enthusiast, and this is Sasha Finster, an off-road riding instructor.
Hello there.
I'm going to have to apologize for the sound quality of this episode. We had some technical difficulties and we lost one of the microphones in the middle of the conversation. It's all my fault. I didn't realize how much or how little battery life was left in the batteries. I cleaned it up as much as I could in post, and I think the information in this episode is extremely important. It's about safety gear, and so you really can't get more important than that. So I hope you guys enjoy the conversation, and I hope the sound isn't too distracting.
So in this episode, we'd like to go through and talk about gear, and we want to give you tips on how to choose gear for adventure riding, for on and off-road riding. And in the background, you hear bikes. We're out here at a practice training ground that people like to ride around at. You'll hear bikes go by. That is part of the podcast. It's a motorcycle podcast.
Exactly.
So what I wanted to do is just start out with the most important thing, your head. And I brought one helmet here to check out. And so for off-road riding and for adventure style riding, we have a wide selection of dual sport style of helmets. And this is a very typical helmet. This is a helmet that I used for it must be 5+ years, 6 years. And so it has a visor here on the front. You have a peak, and but it's kind of an off-road style of helmet. You can see that here. And then a lot of people like yourself like to run an off-road helmet with goggles.
Right.
And then some people will just run a straight street helmet.
Right.
So I think those are kind of your three options.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts? What do you look at when you're choosing a helmet for this style of riding?
Well, when we look at, for example, at our trainings, quite often we have people attend our level 1 ADV trainings. They show up obviously with normal street helmets, right? And those are fine. Protection is basically more or less the same, but there are some differences. Comfort is a little bit different, right? So a lot of them fairly quickly, if they like off-road riding, I'm not talking about hardcore, but if they like off-road riding, they switch to a helmet like yours, right? Because it is a little more comfortable, since our speeds are not that high when we go off-road riding. When in Taiwan, lots of sun, so having that peak here is really, really important, right? So you have just a little bit of, it's not as hardcore like in motocross where you can use that to, duck and, shield yourself from roost or whatever. Sometimes yes, but not most of the time, no. But just having a little bit of sun protection does make a difference in, like, if you do a whole day of riding, So that is really, really, really cool.
Well, talking about the peak, since you mentioned that, I use it every single ride I go on for branches. So if you duck your head straight down, you see the peak. It protects your face from branches and it knocks them out of the way. And in Taiwan, where the vegetation grows at an insane rate, it overgrows the trail in a couple of weeks, it feels like. And so that's a feature I use a lot.
That's why, like, a lot of guys and girls who ride more frequently with us and like the challenge, they immediately switch to an off-road style helmet because the peak is a little longer. Yeah. So you have a little more protection, So like you said, it's perfectly correct. You move your head a little bit more down, and you can protect your face and stuff, and it makes more sense. Exactly, right? To me personally, if you like off-road riding, adventure riding, getting your style, this kind of style of adventure helmet is a must, because it is more comfortable. A lot of times you also have a sunscreen inside that you can just flip down, from the side, at your helmet, whatever, So a lot of times, because here it's hot, you want to have that, the sun protection there, and it's hard to breathe sometimes in the summer. So you open the main visor and you have a little more airflow going on. Right? And something that we've seen is one difference between these kind of helmets and street helmets is you have a little more space in the front, right? So it makes a huge difference already, you know. If you're in the summer, if riding in the summer and it's more technical, or you just dropped your bike, you know. We're surrounded by air, but you will very quickly feel the difference. You know, when in a normal street helmet, you'll be gasping for air, right? And with these helmets, a little bit better because they're more like, you know, pointy in the front. Now the best will be obviously motocross helmets, you know, proper dirt bike helmets, because you have even more space there, right? With me, before it got to a point where you get so tired, like for example from picking up bikes or whatever, right, or from just technical sections, where just taking off the helmet is exhausting, right? So if you can save even that little bit of energy by having a proper helmet, I think that makes a difference. And the last thing would be, because you have that space here, it's not only better for breathing, but since we tend to have a higher possibility or chance of crashing or falling, you have a little more space between the helmet and your face. So you have that extra buffer in between. So with street helmets, it's still fairly close to your mouth here. So if you fall and you hit something, you know, it's just, I mean, you're protected, but the helmet will hit your face, your mouth, right? And with these kind of helmets, it's a little better, right? The only thing you have to keep in mind is good and bad about the peak, right? If you like to go fast, you know, you have to be aware that the peak will, you know, drag. So one thing that we'll always tell everyone is how much drag you will have is take your helmet and look at the helmet from the front and see how much space you have between the peak and the actual helmet. Because if you close your visor here and you look at it from the front, it's very, very open, right? So you have a lot of air that comes in, and the peak is very, very, you know, like small, right? It's very, very thin. So it should slice through the air, and the vibration buffeting should be less. And there you have some manufacturers where it's basically closed, where they're attached here in the top, whatever. So obviously you have more resistance, so it will pull more, and you will have more wind noises, which is really annoying, right? However, I have an Arai off-road helmet at home, and it looks like it's almost completely closed, and this is one of the best helmets actually. Right, like it is fairly quiet, and it's really actually comfortable to ride. I don't know how they did that. So this is the exception from the rule, but usually
the XD4.
XD should be
I think so. I think that's
showing Arai. They have, I can't remember that, but the proper, they only have one that proper
adventure.
No, off-road helmet.
It's a full off-road.
Full off-road. Not the adventure model. The off-road model.
Okay.
So right now I'm using the Shoei. It's also VFW or something that it's called. I forgot. But so this is something with these adventure style helmets that we share with riders, that when you buy one, just look at it from the front to see how closed up or open it is, and that will give you a rough idea if it's how it will handle it, like 120, 130 and above, right? So
so when I bought this, I was riding Supermoto, and I was pretty much just on the street. And one thing I noticed right away is, at least for this particular helmet, and I think it is a general kind of thing with peaks, is you have to be conscious of whether your head is angled up or down. And you have to turn your head just slightly down, and then it will push down. The air will push down on the helmet, which is good. When it pulls up, it's not good. So you have to be kind of conscious of that. And then I notice, like when I'm at highway speed, I'm doing 120, and I'm doing a shoulder check. I feel you immediately feel it pull your head to the side, and that's kind of annoying. But I think this is a good compromise if you're going to be riding a lot on the street. I really do like the visor for highway speeds. You shut that down, and it immediately goes way quiet. The quietness is really nice, and you feel like quite shielded. It reduces the fatigue that you're going to feel when you're doing longer rides as well.
If you do both, this is the helmet to go for. It's just like you said, it's quiet, it's comfortable. If it should rain, whatever, you're completely closed off. It is really, really nice, right?
Yeah.
Myself, I switched to off-road, to the off-road helmet. One of the main reasons basically for that was because I actually had like 3 or 4 Nexx adventure helmets from Nexx. Also weird model number, I forgot. And I love that. I still have one that I sometimes wear, like when I ride my scooter or whatever, right? It has so many things you can put on for your GoPro and adjust the helmet, everything. I really like that. But like I said, it's like when we ride off-road, most of the time I had my main visor up and my sun protection down, and which was fine. But probably was my luck every single time, well, not every, but many times when we hit some technical stuff, like just this short section that was tricky. Right then and there was just some dust, whatever, that went in between into my eye.
Oh.
And I hated that.
Yeah.
Right? And never in easy sections, always in technical sections, right? So I ended up a lot of times riding that section with one eye open, and that's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
So that was one reason why I switched to a proper dirt bike helmet where you have goggles, right? It's just,
They
just
seal to your face.
Seal, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have good vision, and you can breathe a lot, it's still very well ventilated. So that was one main reason. But if you don't go that hardcore, and this is amazing.
Yeah. So for a long time, like I had a pair of goggles that somebody sent me for free, and I had them in the closet, and I just used this. And when I rode off road, I would lift up the visor, and I had glasses on. I wore glasses, and so I just rode like that. And then I tried the goggles one time, and I couldn't believe the airflow. The increased airflow. And so, one of the rules for, across motorcycle gear, when you're riding off-road, the 2 things that matter so much more, one is airflow, and the other is weight. Because you're exerting yourself so much more and you're moving way more slowly. So there's not that much air going over you. So those 2 things you notice so much, and we'll keep coming back to that.
Right.
And so the off-road helmets, they have a lot more airflow. So instead of having a thing that you can close in the front, all of the vents for the audio, all of the vents on this AGV AX8 Dual Sport, they can be shut, which is good if you're riding on the street in the rain. You don't want a bunch of rain coming in through your vents. But that means that they don't open that much. They just have these tiny little slits. And so the airflow is way lower on this Dual Sport model than you're gonna get on an off-road helmet. I currently have a Fly Racing F2 Carbon. It's much lighter and the airflow is much better. And I've done a full comparison review, and I'll put that in the description, that goes through the features. And I think it's gonna be more or less universal across off-road helmets, the differences that you see between these 2 helmets.
Right.
So that'll be something interesting to check out. So did you have any more thoughts before we move on to the next one?
You mean helmets?
Yeah, just on helmets.
Yeah. No. For me, if you want to go really off-road riding, like you said, get a proper dirt bike helmet with good goggles. If it would be me, stay away from the cheap ones. There is a difference. There is a reason why they're cheap and expensive goggles, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, weight, definitely. Safety is another thing. And if you want to go if you want to play off-road really enthusiastically, then obviously your on-road speed is not going to be that high. So all that buffeting and pulling will not be that big of an issue for you. So because that's what we see. People who basically come to a training and after that maybe don't ride off-road anymore. They stick with their normal street helmet. The ones who like, I like this, and they immediately switch to such kind of helmet, an adventure helmet. And then the ones who really like, I love off-road riding, give me more, they will immediately buy a proper dirt bike helmet. So you have that step-by-step evolution going on, which is good.
Yeah.